So, you wait to die? Let's do this! Hope you're ready for a nostalgic trip through Midgard-esque looking environments, because today's title, Light a Fairytale, draws heavy inspirations, in my opinion, from the PS1 era of Final Fantasy VII specifically. But I feel like there can be a lot of nostalgic in that generation in general. So, Light Fairytale is an episodic, this is episode 1, it's an episodic JRPG style game. Now, we'll get into my thoughts of it being episodic, but let's stick to the game for now. The story is about a young man who basically gets caught up in wanting to go to the surface world, sick of his crappy ass life in the underground of a very similar situation to Midgard, where they're in a very industry type setting. But the people apparently live underground in a little bit more similar situation to Breath of Fire 5 in a way. So, its story kind of reminds me of a mix of Breath of Fire 5 and Final Fantasy 7, as you do get involved in a organization trying to also fight down the man, as well. Of course, your hijinks at the beginning of the game start getting you in trouble, and you start getting on the run from those who are in power. Now, this is a turn-based affair. It does not use the ATB system, which the PS1 era Final Fantasies did make use of in the main number entries. It is a turn-based affair, so you don't have to worry about your timer if you're in that kind of boat. So it's a little more traditional in the combat system, but it also mixes up a few different things. For example, the orb system kind of reminds me of both Final Fantasy VII and Suikoden. So orbs are basically materia, like in Final Fantasy VII, but unlike Final Fantasy VII, you have a lot more attachments to your character in the more ways of Suikoden versus your equipment, though it can be attached to your equipment via your hands and such. So you can attach it to your right, left hands, your right and left foot, and your body, which at least in episode 1 for your 2 party members you have, could equip 2 on their body. Now, sadly, there aren't a lot of orbs accessible in episode 1, so you don't really get a lot of opportunity to mess around with it too much. But considering this series is currently on episode 3, I look forward to seeing what more ideas they do with mixing them up. Because, putting them on the body, for example, messes with your defense, and putting them on your hands can add effects to your weapon. On my playthrough, I had a lightning orb attached to the main character's right hand, which applied a 20% lightning to his orb sword. Plus, on top of that, there's also a limit break system called Fury that each of the characters have. There only being 2 characters, there's a limited use of interesting ideas to do with them so far. But hopefully, if the cast increases in future episodes, or the possibility of getting more techniques, would add some more strategy to the game. So we'd have to see what future installments bring with that. Equipment wise, you don't have a lot of different equipment. You have a main weapon, a secondary weapon, and a body, so you don't have a lot of advanced equipment to deal with. And items for the episode 1 were very simplistic. There was not a lot of types of that, and yeah, it's generally your fair on that. Now, this game really does draw a lot of nostalgia to me for the Final Fantasy VII era in Pacific, because it has a lot of that way that the game progresses, a lot of different angles of movement through what would have been, 2D assets background, because, a lot of PS1 games, Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, and that made use of games with having a flat background that looked like a detailed environment. Now, the one thing I don't know, and I need to actually tweet, it's something I meant to do, and if I do get a reply to that, I will add that to the review, actually, but something I was curious about, because the environment does all look like it's in 3D, so I was kind of curious to ask the developer if they will really, because I really do feel like they were trying to emulate that kind of vibe with how the environment is, even though that, to me, it seems like it's all in 3D for the most part of that. But I think they were clearly looking for that. Now, I do find it interesting with the character models themselves aren't so Final Fantasy-ish, in my opinion. They're more of a chibi art style, which really the PS1 era did not make any real use of. Final Fantasy 7 8 were, very realistic or looking, or at least that was what they were definitely trying to go for with 7. I understand, looking back at these days, it's poo poo Papa the Sailor Man. But 8 obviously went in an even more realistic direction, and at least kept that a lot better, even though it also has aged. And while 9 went for a very unrealistic style, the characters weren't chibis. Oddly enough, the art style of the chibi models kind of really make me feel like if they were going to remake like Final Fantasy Tactics in 3D, I kind of feel like this would be the style they would go for. Oddly enough, the main character themselves actually reminds me of Lamza a lot from Final Fantasy Tactics. So I don't know if that is just a me thing, or maybe another kind of nostalgic grab. Like, the character models really make me feel like if they were to do a 3D remake of Final Fantasy Tactics, that would be the kind of style they would try to go with a little bit. Not that I would want them to, because I mean, it'd be like the same opinion to me, like with the Pixel remasters, where they lose a lot of that darker tone to their sprites and that, but I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah. The music and the art style get the job done fine. This is as far as I'm aware of, one-person team, or at best a very small team. So the game does have a little, not 100% perfect. It has a few of its own little, like, for example, like, I noticed, like, going up and down stairs, it's kind of floaty. Like, when you run up full speed, you kind of float in the air, and when you run down some, you kind of float in the air. Kind of, and I'm assuming that's because I think they used Unity for this. But whatever the case is, it doesn't really bother the game with that. But yeah, you can find a few little floaty parts like that. There was, I believe, about 2 instances where I found enemies underground from random battles as well, which didn't hinder the fight or anything. It just was a odd effect. And I did find some boxes I was able to walk through, but they didn't prevent me from getting out or anything. But yeah, you can find some minor flaws in the game, but I do feel like it has a very charm to it. If you grew up with JRPGs in the PS1 era, I think you will find some nostalgic grab at here. Now, whether it's really successful is a bit up in the air, because it being episodic is really a really contentious thing to me with the game. Because on one hand, I do find the game really charming, and it's a nice start that could build on something really nice with the game. But the fact is, episode 1 is essentially like, basically imagine the parts of Final Fantasy VII where you do like the initial bombing and maybe like the 2 forced bombings or that. Like, it's a tutorial basically. I mean, you don't get a lot of action going on in the game, and it's a bit of a shame because it really like leaves off in like getting ready to go on the journey, and it makes me wonder how episode 2 will start, because for some people, of course, the common sense person would play them in order, but some people can be weird, and if you start episode 2, like on one hand, like, I obviously wanted to continue the momentum, but on the other hand, there was the crowd that might not really get the proper capability of playing them in order for one reason or another. Like, for example, if they only like physical media, so right now episode 1 is in physical media, and maybe by the time 2 gets a physical version, 1 will be sold out, and then it might be hard to get one, and then it kind of comes a iffy case on whether you'll ever really get to play it unless you break down buy it digitally or something, you know. There could be a weird scenario, so that means, like, do you make a introductory tutorial again for, like, episode 2 of that? And, I mean, it's not that it bogs the game down or anything, it just feels like it's the beginning of a JRPG, and that's it. And that's what kind of drags the thing down. And it being episodic means it's also short. You know, it's about 2-3 hours long, depending on how much you spend talking and searching around, and whether you do all the random fights and stuff, you know. If you just kind of go through it without doing all the side stuff, you can get through it faster. And the fact that you get to play the game from 2 people's perspectives, after you finish the main character's perspective, you can play as his companion's perspective, which gives you a few different scenes, because there's a few times where she's gone from the party that you get to see her perspective of. But otherwise, it's just basically replaying the game again, which is just kind of there to add time to the game. On one hand, I mean, it's a little bit more content, but it doesn't really add a whole lot to it. So it's kind of, yeah. And I have to question some of the things like the random battle design. So, to first go in, the little holographic face shield thing you get in the beginning of the game. So, this kind of, like, if you played 7, well, you could hit, like, select and make little arrow icons and stuff appear to let you see where to go and stuff. It's kind of like an evolution of that. It'll mark exits and entrances and objects of interest, but it also outlines random battles. So, unlike, you know, like most JRPGs will, random battles would generally, you know, you run around, you hit one, you get a screen transition, and then, you know, you're on the field, you do the combat, screen transition, you're back in the field. All the combat is on the same field, so one triggers, they spawn, you fight, and then you continue on your merry way, which is very nice. I do like systems like that. There have been, you know, several games that have tried non-transition random fights before, and different ones have been more successful than others, but they're very interesting. But I think the negative side to this is the fact that I think the developer did it this way because, you know, certain areas might not be appropriate for a fight. So when you use the holographic thing, you can see cubes, which are where random fights can happen in. And they're only set to certain spots. So if you want to, like, level grind for money and EXP, that you basically gotta run around these cubes. And this does what I consider a cardinal sin. This is, of course, a me thing. But I personally don't like it when a JRPG tries to limit how much you can fight. Lost Odyssey did something like this with the amount of EXP you can get from mobs in the area before you just basically can't get anything anymore. This game instead sets a certain amount of encounters you can have in these cubes, meaning you can run out of random battles, which isn't something I personally would prefer myself. But being the beginning of the game, it's not that big of a deal. But I would hope to not see this feature in the future installments, because I just kind of, I feel like I get the idea that you want to control this on difficulty range, but I think, like, being able to level grind more is a way for a player to control the difficulty of the game themselves, versus, you know, having a option on like the main menu and that. So I feel like that's a player choice kind of thing, and I just feel like it hinders that kind of thing, because, you know, if somebody's beating their head against the wall and they can't really improve their characters anymore because of such a system, it kind of can make a frustrating system, though, because it means you have to conform to whatever the developer is trying to get you to do, though, which some people aren't as good as. Some people are pretty good at being able to change up the strat and deal with the challenge, and other people aren't. So that's just my subjective opinion on that. But I don't mind necessarily the cube system of having them in certain locations, because I can understand if they made it like everywhere, then they would have to more carefully detail bug problems and stuff. So I'm sure it makes the encounters easier to ensure they work properly in designated areas. So I don't mind as much. I just don't like that they're limited. So, but there ain't much to buy in episode 1, and it's not hard at all. So there's not really a big need to grind. I mean, you're not gonna get really high level in this, and I'm not sure if your progress, like the saves, can be transferred to episode 2. Supposedly episode 2 is going to be coming out physically this year, because I've asked the dev about it, because it's something I bugged about them before it got a physical release, and then I bugged them about it again after to say, like, so when can we expect episode 2? And last year they told me this year, so I am looking forward to see what kind of additions, because the things I would like to see is like data carrying over, more improvements to certain things and that, and of course a more meatier and challenging or combat, because like I said, episode 1 feels like a very tutorial kind of thing. It doesn't bog you down in a whole lot of menus or anything. It's just, you know, it's just kind of guiding you through the world a little, learning about it and the situation the characters are going to be doing through, which I would imagine will be, you know, for the rest of the game of that. But I enjoyed it. It's a short game. Whether you want to get it physically or not is going to obviously be very subjective to you. It would be nice probably by the time they finish this storyline. Like, I'm not sure how many like episodes this is planned to be, but it'd be nice down the road if they just make like a completed package, which is something usually episodic games usually do. You know, they get all the parts done, they make a compilation of all of them together. So that'd be something nice down the road for some people, because then it would feel a little less odd. Because like I said, as much as I find the whole experience charming, it's nice to see somebody trying to do a indie JRPG style game that's clearly drawing a lot of inspiration from older JRPGs of the PS1 era. But it just feels weird getting essentially what's just like, you know, the first maybe like 3 hours of a game. And, you know, anyone who's a big JRPG or RPG fan at all can tell you, you know, the sad truth is a lot of times the beginning of an RPG is usually considered some of the worst times. Because it's hard to set up a good start and keep the momentum in that. And when you're making it episodic, even if you succeed at doing that, the momentum is at a complete halt unless you get the sequel, and that's assuming the sequel was out when you finished the first one, which obviously when the game first came out, there was no other episodes out yet, so... And if you're waiting for a physical version like I am, then you're also at a halt. So, you know, it's just kind of a shame in that regard. So, I would like them to do a complete version whenever the full game is done. But in general, I really did like the game. It's a very charming game. If you're interested in like replay value with like achievements and trophies, it has a full set of trophies and everything. It's not a skimped down one, so you got platinum and that, and there's stuff to get. I got like the majority of the trophies just playing the game blindly, so it's probably not a really hard platinum to get on PS4 at least. But generally, my biggest complaints are that I don't like the fact that it limits your random encounter weights, And I would have really wished they did have some more stuff in episode 1. Because there's not a lot of items, and like, the only real orb I think the only orb I ever found during the whole game was lightning. I don't think I ever found any other orbs, actually. I think the final boss of episode 1 dropped one, didn't it? I think? Or was that the boss before? I can't remember. It's been a little while since I did my live streams of the game of that. But overall, it's a pretty standard affair other than that. It's nice, I like it. It had very nice humor in my opinion, and it shows you a lovely cast of characters that you'll get to interact with. I feel may fall under, how should I say, lovesick syndrome, where like all the characters might have a thing for the main character. So it might go in the direction of a slight harem kind of thing. But you only have one companion in episode 1. And the way the game looks like is it might go to a 3-party system in episode 2. Because of how the characters are displayed on the menu when you go through your equipment stuff. It kind of looks like they have a third slot there, though the game in episode 1 never has a third character, so I don't know for a fact whether it's going to go through a 3-party system. But that would make sense, especially if they're targeting the PS1 era of JRPGs, because a lot of PS1 JRPGs did use a 3-party system. A few broke out of that shell in various ways, like Suikoden obviously had 6 party members, and then Breath of Fire 4 had the back system where you had your other characters in the back row, and you could swap them out and such with the front row and that. So there were a few that did break that, but in general, a lot of the JRPGs in the PS1 era went with 3 characters for a good chunk. So that does feel like a appropriate number for the game to go for, but I don't know much about episode 2, so I don't know how similar it stays or changes. And you could even argue that might be another thing you could complain about, the episodic nature. Because while it gives the dev the ability to improve and change systems, but that you could also argue that being a negative, because let's say you really like the orb system, but for some reason all the players who played the game didn't, the dev could decide, well, maybe I'll scrap the orb system and do something else in episode 2 instead. They could radically change the game, so that's a potential. Now, like I said, episode 2's out, and I believe episode 3 is being developed. I don't think it's out yet, Don't quote me on that, though. So, I don't know which direction it went, because obviously, I play a lot of my games blind, so it's not like I'm going to go spoil the game for me in that regard, but I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility that, but mainly that's what I think about, like, Fairytale. It obviously is pulling at your PS1 era JRPG strings. It works okay. It's not graphic fidelity. It doesn't need to be graphic fidelity as a JRPG. And it follows a lot of those kind of tropes of somebody who clearly has nostalgia for Japanese stuff. Now, I don't think the dev is Japanese, though. I'm not really familiar with I am not familiar with where they live in the world of that, but as far as I know, they're like a solo dev. But regardless of whether they are or not, the game's clearly going for a JRPG style vibe. So, but I liked it. It's kind of hard to justify the physical version because it's only, like I said, like at best about like, maybe if I'm being like really generous and you like go hardcore 100%, play both storylines in that, like 4 hours. That's kind of hard to really justify, honestly. It's quite pricey for the physical version. I mean, it's not like it's $60 or anything, but, it's just $19 for what's generally for most people going to be a 2-3 hour game is kind of tough, and the game the game goes for, depending on where you get it, because if you get it via Video Games Plus, you know, it's in Canadian, so it's $39.99 Canadian, which generally, like, I think $79.99 Canadian is a $60 American, so take that as you will. So I mean, it's not outrageous. Like if I use Google calculator here real quick. So according to Google, that's like $29.28 going to its converter in American dollars. And this game you can still buy through Video Games Plus, which is a good Canadian store. I highly recommend buying brand new and some limited stuff through them. Or you can get from Red Arts themselves, which is the European limited company that printed out this physical version of Episode 1. So you can still buy it for its OG price. Now this was a $9.99 printed copy, so there is a limited amount of these, but they have still been pretty available for a good while. So they're still there, but once it vanishes, who knows where the price on secondhand market will go. It's not outrageous currently on eBay either, so you have several options if you are interested in it. Now, what would I give the value of this game? By itself, as an Episode 1, it's a tough recommendation for the physical version because it's so skimpy on content as a JRPG. Like I said, it is charming, and I hate to be mean to it because it is charming, and I imagine playing all the episodes together will obviously be a much more filling experience, but on its own, Episode 1 as a physical product is kind of hard to recommend outside of the die-hard people. So for the physical copy, if you're a die-hard person, I could understand buying it because it's not super expensive, but like I said, for a 2-3 hour average game is going to be a tough sale for a lot of people for even $19, basically $20. And like I said, it's basically more around the $30 mark once you do all the conversion stuff. So it's like, But what would I give the value? I think, honestly, and this kind of hurts for Episode 1 in my opinion, I think we're looking at more of a $5 price tag for digitally for sure. The physical version, of course, you know, with some of these type of games, you have to think about whether you feel like it's worth it yourself to get. And you do get a soundtrack. It's a 2-case PS4 case with the soundtrack and a booklet, so it's not like it's a bad version to get or anything by any means, but it's just such a short game with there's so little meat to the game. It's so little. Like, if it had added a lot more orbs, equipment, maybe even had another party member and beefed up the combat system a bit more for Episode 1, it would feel probably a lot more fulfilling, but it just feels like a very basic beginning of a JRPG sliced out of the, you know, full experience, and it just really, as a solo product, it really hurts it, in my opinion. That's just why, like, I understand one of the main points of an episodic thing was to, in a affordable way, develop a game in that. And that's why I say, like, I would hope by the time this game series is fully done that they'll make, like, a more completed package. Because I feel like that will be much better for all the episodes in general. Because I feel like that complaint will exist in all of them to a certain extent, obviously. But I'm hoping it'll be a vastly less as the games go on, obviously. Because I would hope it gets, you know, more difficult, more stuff and things to learn and combo and match and strategize with, if you know what I mean. Now, this game sells for $9.99 digitally, and there is no DRM free version of the game available anywhere as far as I'm aware of. So you either have to go with Steam for PC, and of course you can get on the digital marketplaces of consoles that the game is out on. It's not a horrible price by any means, but again, like I said, the lack of any real big combat through the game just makes it feel a bit overpriced. I mean, you look at something, and I hate to do this to the game, because again, I did find the game really charming. It just lacks meat on the bone. It's like you order the steak, and you got like 80% less steak on the bone, if that makes any sense. Like, you look at something like Undertale, and you get a good amount of chunk of stuff in it, and lots of things to mess with, outcomes, alternate ways to play the game, and that, and lots of fun hijinks and secrets, and that it just doesn't feel like it has all that kind of content, if that makes sense. Now, of course, I don't consider Undertale a RPG. I consider it a light shmup with the disguise of RPG, so that might not be the best comparison, but I'm just saying, like, well, I feel Undertale had a lot of stuff. I feel like this just was the bare bones basics, and it's not bad, like I said. It just feels like it being cut up feels like more of a hindrance to me. I kind of have to sadly say, as by itself, $5 feels like I would wait for a sale on the episode itself. Now, if down the road there becomes bundles to get multiple episodes together, or the full entire game, I would probably either aim for a bundle with multiple episodes, or wait for a complete package of the games, which, like I said, I don't know how long the series is planned for, how many episodes of that. But, yeah, I feel like, obviously, these complaints would all be non and void in a more complete, or if it came with one or two more episodes with it, because it's just by itself, it just feels so bare bones. I know we keep going on about that, but that is the biggest weakness here. It is just seriously the biggest weakness here. It's just such a bare bones amount of content on the bone here. But it does have, hopefully, something. It is a nice foundation to build on, is, I guess, the main point I'm going on. It just feels lacking because it's by itself. Now, it looks nice, and it actually has very nice anime cutscenes. There's a few of them that happen in the game, which were also very nice. So, don't take it the wrong way. It is a very nice, lovely start of the game. It just, by itself, it's just, I hope, and definitely am looking forward to episode 2, and I really hope that the combat and everything gets much more better, like more tools to mess with, new orbs to link around in the menus to see what kind of effects and build strategies around them, because, well, like I said, basic heal, but it works. So, here's the hopefully episode 2 down the road, Light Fairytale episode 2, hopefully to come out physically, hopefully later this year, I hope still, but who knows, plans can change. I will get with the content of the Cradle, and hope we keep hearing news about that down the road, I hope, because I'm definitely looking forward to it, because I did have fun with this. I don't want that to come the wrong way. I might be trying to over-exaggerate on trying to not be mean to the game, but I'm trying to also be honest, if you know what I mean. And it is very nice to see the game is very well perceived, very well received on Steam. It's very recommended in that, so. But generally, like, if you look at a lot of complaints, yeah, I mean, just taking a quick look at, like, a lot of people tell you that it's short. It's definitely the big weakness. And, yeah, like I said, the episodic thing just feels very odd for a JRPG. I understand for the budget and everything, like I said, but from the consumer perspective, it just seems a little odd. But again, if you're watching this video in hindsight and, you know, the game's done and you can get, like, episode 1 through whatever, which is the entire thing, for a bundle, it'll probably be way, way better to do it that way. But yeah, here's the episode 2, and let's get on with spoilers, shall we? So like I said, this is basically introductory to the world and what's going on with the characters. Basically, they get involved with a terrorist group that's fighting those in power in the lower city. And they basically decide that they want to go to the surface and shit and get out of this underground hellscape that they live in that's all slummy and slimmy and slummy. The game ends on a cliffhanger after fighting the final boss of episode 1. The characters get chased to a cliff and the main character makes a leap off the cliff, leaving it vague on what happens next. Now I imagine episode 2 is either going to immediately pick up at this point, or it could do the trope where you play as someone else for a while and then you find out what happened to the main character. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen in episode 2. I have literally seen nothing of it because, like I said, I like to play my games majorly blind, like 99% of the time. So it's something I'm looking forward to seeing more of the story. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to hopefully the combat being built up a lot more, because I feel like there's a lot of good stuff going on here. Having a system that's similar to Materia and a lot of ways of attaching it to yourself that affects your character's weapons and stats. Like say, attaching it to a body gave my companion a lightning bonus. So you know, there's different ways to add elemental bonuses to your weapons and yourself. So I just feel like there's some nice potential of things you can do there. But yeah, I kind of just wish there was a lot more meat to the game. But time will tell on whether they improve more about that or not. So those are my thoughts on Light Fairytale episode 1 from Nico Works. Until next time, make sure you be careful around the authorities. Don't go near any cliffs and dead ends, because that's just an anime trope. Till next time, be careful out there on the proving grounds, and I'll see you next time.